Hello and welcome to the Table Podcast. It looks a little bit different today. We're here at the table and it's a different table. We are up in Nashville, Indiana. We are R&Ring up here hanging out with the pastoral staff and family, except for my wife who had to stay home with the kids because she went to Disney last week. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Sheds a tear.
She got to go to Disney last week, so we're good. But today we're here. It's me, Kaleb. We have Kaitlynn and Taylor Kuhn. We have Miriam and Danny Flo, and we are going to have a table podcast talking about relationships, and this is going to be fun.
Of course,
they have no idea what's getting ready to hit them.
Here we go,
mic, sweetie.
Yeah. So when we're talking rules of thumb, when we talk today, talk into the mic, please.
Of course, it's going to be fun.
I will say it's way different not having headphones. I can't hear what's happening.
Yeah. So you have to listen really well because I'm not going to yell or try.
You
not
have to listen very well.
And
Just like in life.
I'm so good at listening.
And I have to hold a microphone, so this is a little bit different too. So I think we're all adapting to our first world problems, and we're going to be okay.
Blessed are the flexible that shall not be bent out of shape.
That's exactly right. So today on the table, we're going to begin with an appetizer. Then we will have an entree and then a sweet dessert. And hopefully in all of it, you will get something beneficial for your life, things to think on, things to ponder, to consider in your own relationships, whether you're married or not. There should be some good conversation coming out of this either way. And so let's start with our appetizer today. Our appetizer question is, you were both married. So you both had songs at your wedding. What was your song? We'll start with Taylor and Kaitlynn. What was your song?
Go ahead.
Our song is
Never Stop. Doors? Oh, sorry.
I am, yes, a Swiftie at heart. Our song is Never Stop by Safety Suit. And it's funny that you ask because Taylor actually wants to change our song because he thinks it's kind of depressing. So
It's like it's depressing because it's like trying to convince someone that I will never stop. It's almost like they have anxiety that they're going to leave. And it's like, no, I promise I'll never stop watching as you leave. I'll never stop. So
yeah, it's definitely an insecure song, but we were 20, so.
it makes sense.
What about Miriam and Danny? What about you guys?
What are we calling our song? Is it the song that we danced to? Is it the song that we fell in love, quoting back and forth to each other? Is it the song you walk down the aisle to?
Yes,
they're different songs.
Yes.
All of the above.
All of the above. Give us.
Well,
what'd you dance to?
We first start. Oh, I'm already answering the other question. Sorry. We first started when we first started to know that we were meant for one another. We were quoting "Round Here" by the Counting Crows to each other.
Via email. This is when email was really new.
Not via text.
Date us a little bit. Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell, but Kaitlynn and Taylor, I think, maybe have not been alive as long as we've been married. Or it's really close. It's really close.
Probably pretty close. You're pretty old.
They are older than we've been married. At least 4 years.
We also look very young.
For our listeners, how long have you guys been married?
Almost 23 years.
Come on now.
Almost 20.
Yay.
Well, no.
Uh-oh.
It's 2023, babe.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 2024. To be fair, I lost a whole year.
Do you still want us to answer the question, though?
So how many, you said 23 years?
Yes.
And Kaitlynn and Taylor?
We are 27.
Years
so
old.
we have been, years old. Yeah. Have not been married since we were, in the womb. So
before the foundations of the earth were laid, we were married
in a holy matrimony.
Okay, so
Anyway.
So you're 27 years old, but how long have you been married?
It'll be 7 years this June.
7 years. So we have 7 years and 23 years.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, we just celebrated 10 years of marriage as well.
Congrats to all of us.
Yeah, yay. So what, continue on, you said, what was the song that you danced to then?
Do you want to take that one, Miriam?
I'm sure. And you said your song was depressing, but our song is song number 41 by Dave Matthews Band. And if you listen to it, he talks about how the trouble's coming,
The difficulty
is coming, and stuff like that. Which
You're
is stuff
prophesying things
that we were not even paying attention to when we chose the song. It was more, I really like this song.
Yep.
We can't choose this other Dave Matthews song we want, even though it's got a really great bass line because it's about a stalker. So we took that one out, but then we used this one instead. So, but that was our song we danced to.
That's fun. Marley and I, we danced to God Gave Me You, and it was by Dave Barnes,
Of course you did.
not by Blake Shelton.
Not Blake Shelton.
So yeah, that's that. I want to make that very clear distinction. Dave Barnes, the original, was so much better. Okay, so for our appetizer today, I have some questions for you guys, and what I'm excited about is to get different perspectives because you're at different stages of life. Kaitlynn and Taylor, you guys have been together for a while. You've been married for 7 years, and you have no kids at this stage in life. Miriam and Danny, you've been together for a while as well. You've been married for 23 years, and you have 2 children, and they're a little bit, far apart from each other. And so that's a unique place as well. And so I'm really excited to get to see kind of the perspectives here. And let's begin with this first question, and I'll start with the senior couple here. What was your first impression of your spouse?
I'll go first. So Danny and I met through mutual friends, and one of the very first times we met, he came to my graduation party. And he spilled Big Red in our living
Miriam
room.
knew I was the one for her because she spills too.
But he spilled Big Red on like our white carpet. So I was like, oh no, Mom's going to be upset. But we were getting ready to remodel, so it wasn't a big deal. So my first impression was like, he's nice, but maybe a little clumsy. I don't know.
Both are true.
Not bad looking, but
And she was right. My first impression of Miriam, I thought she was really funny in a dorky kind of way. And that I remember seeing you play sports and you tiptoed while you dribbled the basketball. And that resonated with me because when I played basketball, I did for a little while, they called me Twinkle Toes because I tiptoed while I dribbled the basketball. So we were meant for each other, really.
That's amazing. What about you guys? What was your all's first impression of one another?
I met Taylor in kindergarten. We've known each other for a long time, but I'm going to tell kind of a little short story. So in 2nd grade, we had a field day, and it's like the end of the year. You go outside and there's like all kinds of games and activities. Well, we got rained out this one particular year. So we came inside and we were going to watch a movie instead. And so all the kids piled in the classroom, and the movie they put on was Harry Potter. And so we're in 2nd grade. So we're 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. And Taylor decided that he did not want to watch Harry Potter because he was not allowed to. Mm-hmm. So instead of foregoing what his parents told him, he sat in our other teacher's class and read the Bible that sat on her desk. Okay, that's part 1 of the story. Part 2 of the story is later on, on the back of my notebook, I wrote a list of names. On one side of the page was people I liked, and on the other side of the page was people I did not like. And I had Taylor on my list of people that I did not like because he would not watch Harry Potter. Apparently, I thought that was really lame when I was 8 years old. So that's kind of like my first memory kind of that I have with him.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's the same one.
Yep.
Has he moved to the other side of the list now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part.
It depends on the day. She's like, this is Eraser.
So
I know. I switch back and forth what side his name's on.
What was your first impression, Taylor, of Kaitlynn?
I don't remember. I remember the story, but I wasn't like, wow, this girl's kind of crazy or anything like that. But yeah, I can verbatim say that same story because that's what we both remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was your first, you said that was your first,
Okay.
your first
But
memory.
like, let's talk in 8th grade because we had True Love Waits at the church. And, so the guys stayed at the church and I lived in the house right next to the church. So, Kaitlynn, she has this wonderful gift of wanting to see people again. And one of the ways that she ensures that happens is she will leave articles of whatever, whether it be clothing or jewelry, she'll leave it at places to make sure that she sees people again.
We can attest to this.
Yeah. So she left her clear iPod Touch case, and I got butterflies in my stomach because I knew I would see Kaitlynn again. So
I love that.
Yep.
So we'll stick with you guys for the second question. Do you still feel that way about them now?
Well, as we just said, Taylor, whether or not I like him is, dependent on the day, right? So he switches back and forth between the list. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, every day that goes by, whether it's like a good day or a challenging day, I never question, that this was the right decision or that you're the right person for me. So, yeah.
There are still times, and it's especially when you interact with others, and when we talk about the gifts that God's put on your life, one of your biggest one is making people feel at home and comfortable, and to see you minister to people and that kind of stuff. That was like a prayer on my heart before we actually got together and all that. That's like the woman I saw you to be. So when I see that, I'm like, oh my God, like that's amazing. So yes, I still get butterflies.
Awesome. What about you guys?
Sweetie.
Yes, he's still a little bit clumsy and he's very cute.
And I don't think I said I got butterflies. Much like my older son, I was quite confident in myself, but I certainly get those now. I remember, this doesn't maybe exactly tie in, but I remember when we got married, by the end of the day, my cheeks hurt because I was smiling so much. And I don't know, just every time I see you, it's a goofy smile, but it's a clumsy smile, I guess you could say. But yes, I very much still feel that way. And I don't know, you may still tiptoe when you dribble. I haven't seen you dribble in a while.
It's been a while since I played basketball.
So speaking of smiling, leads me to my next question. We'll stay with you guys on this one. How often do you laugh together?
I don't think Miriam and I stop. Kaitlynn, I think, told us this last night. I tend to laugh both at appropriate times and inappropriate times. So we laugh together a lot. It's one of my favorite things about our relationship. I would certainly say that Miriam and I are best friends. And part of that is we joke with each other a lot and with other people together. Yeah.
And I think too, like he said, I know that I recognize that I use humor to deal with things when I'm uncomfortable. So even when we're having uncomfortable conversations, there's still a lot of brevity there because we're still in it for the goofiness, for the fun, for the fun of it. That is actually one of our family mottos is flows find the fun. So whatever it is, that's what we're going to do. So
I love that.
What about you guys?
It's every day.
Yeah.
One of our favorite things to do is kind of like reminisce and like go through photos and that kind of stuff. And I don't know, just share stories. And
I mean, literally the other night we laid in bed and went through every single video that has been taken on my phone since like 2017, minus the TikToks that I've saved. But other than that, every video that I've taken, we went through and watched every single one of them. And some of them got some tears, like laughing tears rolling down the face. It was some good memories.
So we'll stay on this for just a minute. You both said that you laugh every day and, that's kind of part of who you are. Can you share what you see? And you've been together for 7 years. That's a good amount of time. And 23 years, that's a good amount of time. In that time, I'm sure there were times where you didn't feel like laughing, obviously. And, we deal with the stuff that we get to deal with. Can you maybe share from your experience the value of laughter and coming back to that place together and maybe even like how that has helped y'all's relationship? Either one of you can.
I would say I'll go first. I think that it's very easy when you think about marriage and relationships of taking yourself too seriously. Whether it's, I feel really strongly about this and you're not responding with that same seriousness, or this is really important to me. And when you giggle or smile, I feel like you're not taking it as serious as I am. I think that can be really dangerous because I think a lot of people take themselves too seriously. But I think that, I don't know if I remember your question, but I think that like part of us being able to laugh together is not being able to not taking ourselves or the situation as this is the end of everything, but more of this is how I feel about something, and I want to express myself to you. And we've been married for 23 years, which is a really long time, but we've had points in our marriage where we communicated really well with each other, and we've had points where our communication was either non-existent or we just didn't take the time for it, really, like to do anything other than you're taking this kid here or we're doing this and we've got to do this, and this week, other than scheduling. But when we really sit down and just express how we're feeling, that's made a big difference. I think for me too, I really am fascinated by personality types and understanding why somebody might be doing something. So when he says something to me a certain way, I think, okay, his personality is very much a peacemaker. So he doesn't want to say anything that's going to upset me. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of times it's laughing, because it's like, we got to deal with this, or whatever, I love you. Stop spending so much money or, or whatever, But at the same time, maybe because we know that about each other, it makes it easier. Again, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I just think being able to not take yourself too seriously is huge in really any relationship, but especially marriage. Yes, it's really important that we communicate. Yes, I need to express my feelings and my thoughts about things, but his response to that is not going to define my opinion or whatever, or his response to that is not going to keep me from expressing it that way. Does that make any sense?
It did.
Okay.
And for me, I would say I enjoy life, and I enjoy my life with Miriam, and laughter is really just one of the ways I express that joy, which sounds maybe cliche, but it's just true.
Yeah. Yep.
It just is. So I think that's why we do laugh together a lot, because we love the life that we have together.
Yeah. When you said, I was thinking something along the same lines as joy, because something that people say about Taylor and I a lot is that we're very joyful people, because joy is kind of like our baseline. Like that's where we start. So for us, it's very easy to not make light of a heavy situation, but to be able to find, a crack of brightness, in something that may be, pretty heavy or pretty dark. And so, I mean, even as teenagers, we laughed together all the time. We were very good friends in high school, and afterwards until we became, a couple. So that's something that's always been really easy for us, is being able to find joy, even when it doesn't look like there might be any, so, yeah.
I think you guys expressed it really well. I think laughter is a component of our spiritual warfare almost. We know in Psalms it talks about how there are enemies of God, and they're, conspiring against him, and God sits on the throne and laughs. Yeah. To come back to that piece of, this may really suck right now, but we still reign and rule with Christ. And another thing too, we talk about a lot, is my favorite sound that people make is their laugh. Yeah. Each and every single person, like I love their laugh. Like when I think about my mom, when I think about Grammy, when I think about Kaitlynn and you guys, like literally like the best sound you guys could ever make is not being able to contain the joy inside. Yeah. It makes some weird, like, like the weird sounds, that just come out. It's one of my favorite things. So I think that brings back a focus to, I love this person, even if, we did terrible things or whatever, I love you.
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing too, because I think you said the focus, it brings it back. And I think that's one of the things, like, as we magnify what is good, yes, the situation sucks, but I'm so happy that I'm walking through with you, or whatever. So I'm going to magnify the good, and I'm going to continue to focus on that. And in that place, then we can make decisions out of love and not fear.
That's good.
And, bringing it even again to a scriptural basis, laughter does the heart good like a medicine. Yeah. A cheerful heart, a joyful heart. And so I think laughter in a marriage is actually, it's medicating.
It is.
because there are so many times in life where, I mean, just in general, life in general is, up and down, and, you've got good days and bad days, but then you add another person and another soul that, you guys are connected in this, and that amplifies that. And there are many times where you need that medicine.
Yes.
And when you're taking, it's like I'm taking my daily dose of multivitamins, like, and my vitamin C, it's my laughter that we get to take together that helps us in these, both in preventative measures, but then also whenever we are.
Nope. Keep going.
See, laughing, right?
I don't know what happened.
Anyway, so you made mention of talking about loving one another and choosing this as part of our walk, and that's when you go to a wedding, that's one of the things that is stated. We love each other. Why do you love each other? They make me feel so loved. Etc. Talking about love, and love can be so overblown and what the understanding of it is as well, but it's actually a very challenging thing. And so my question to you then, both of you, and we can start with you guys on this one, how do you demonstrate your love for one another? Because we know that love from a Christian perspective, from a godly perspective, agape is a demonstrated action, right? It's not just a feeling that we have, but it's a demonstrated action. So in your 7 years of marriage, how do you demonstrate your love for one another?
I think it starts with choosing the other person, and then for me specifically, I've had to deal with a lot of just anger and learning how to manage that emotion, because I really sucked at it for a long time, and it still gets the best of me sometimes, but it's learning to not just spit off at the mouth and say those really hurtful things that I know will hurt her, So for me, that's kind of some of it, and still serving with the right posture of my heart. So whether that's cleaning the house or whatever, making sure I'm not saying, woe is me, so that's for me, like in those specific areas, that's where I've had to grow and, not love my own life, but love my own wife.
Yeah. I think for me, when I'm not in a good place, I kind of retreat inside myself, and it's very like a self-centered type of posture. And so I have to like bring myself out of that place and remember there's somebody in my home and in my life and in my heart that deserves my time and attention and my full capacity, basically. So especially for him, he has 2 love languages, but really it's all of them for him except for like gifts. So all of them for him they're pretty high. But for me, selflessly, it's definitely physical intimacy. Whether it's, I'm one of those people that I hate holding hands. Like, I hate it. I feel constricted. His hands are clammy most of the time. It's just not my favorite thing to do. But like when he reaches for my hand, I know it's because he needs it. And so that's a very small snippet, when we talk about intimacy, that's a very small piece of it. But for him, I know it goes a long way. I also know for him, it's really important that I help like around the house and things like that. So, especially when I know he's putting in really long hours at work or has spent a lot of time away from home, being able to pick up the slack in that area and having him come home to a peaceful place is very important to him. So that's one of the ways, love in action. It is physical action because you're cleaning or you're organizing or doing laundry or whatever. And they feel like mundane tasks. But for me, for it to not feel like a task, I'm remembering that I'm doing it for him and not necessarily just for me or for the sake of a clean home or whatever else. I'm doing this because I love you and I know this is going to help you, in all these different ways. So, yeah.
What about you guys?
If I can share a story related to this question, then it ties right into what you were talking about. I think it was in our first year of marriage, maybe our second year. Miriam and I got into one of those kind of laughing, kind of serious arguments because she said something about, do you want to do the dishes to me? And I said, no, I don't want to do the dishes, but I'm going to do them. And I still remember she was like, but I want you to want to do the dishes, which made no sense to me for the longest time because I said, in my mind, I thought, who wants to do the dishes? Who wants to take out the trash? Who wants to sweep the floor and those sorts of things? And it's such a a mundane everyday thing to clean and pick up. And it's just something we have to do as an adult. But now, and I don't know when that switch clicked for me, but I do want to do the dishes because what I want to do is I want to put Miriam first.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you know, that's where I find the joy in that task. Yeah. Now, what I'm still really bad about is I want a pat on the head after I do the dishes or sweep. I'm like, look, Miriam, you see what I did? I swept the floor in here. And Miriam's like, yeah, that's something we have to do. I don't know if that's because I'm a man or if it's because, you know, I'm me. Miriam's personality is she wants to give to everybody. She wants to give her time. She wants to serve. And we tease and say it's because she wants, you know, she wants to feel needed, but I think it comes from an altruistic place. She just wants to serve people. Yeah. And that is not my personality or my druther. That's not my love language. Mm-hmm. I fight, I guess you'd call it selfishness, because I'd rather just go and do my own thing and ignore everybody. But what I constantly do is go, you know, like you said, you choose your spouse. Mm-hmm. And that's how I choose Miriam, is because I want to put her needs and desires above my own. So when Miriam wants to go and serve, and I don't really feel like it, I just do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Because yes, I'm serving others, and yes, I'm serving God, but more immediately, at least, I'm serving Miriam.
Mm-hmm. 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 And I'm getting better at not motivating with guilt, but also recognizing, you know, because you were asking how we show love, right, to one another. And, you know, so Danny's thing is not acts of service, but it's definitely words of affirmation. So even though I know that it just feeds that to give him those, I also think, okay, he did this nice thing for me. So I will to say, thank you. The house looks so nice. Thank you so much. And then 20 minutes later, Danny, the house looks so nice. Thank you. Because those words of affirmation mean a lot to him. So even in that, like throughout the day, I'll try to, if I'm going to send him a text, I try to use more words, because, you know, he'll say, how's your day? And I'm like, good.
Fine. Yeah. That's literally so Taylor.
I have to try to think, okay, it's good, but I miss you. Or, you know, I was thinking blah, blah, you know, I have to make sure to add more words, because I don't use a lot of words. I don't think most of the time. So I really it's not natural, but I get to will to do that. Yeah. I get to choose to delight in that part of it. And also, you know, like whenever there are things we're talking about that Danny's opinions matter to me, and the things that he likes and his interests are important to me. So even if I don't feel like listening to the whole dissertation on why this bass player used this particular string on a certain song, but not on all the other songs he played, I still get to listen to it because I'm willing to delight in that in him. So
in Miriam's defense, I have a lot of interests, and when something piques my interest, I go and research it, and then I want to tell her everything that I read.
Yeah.
I get excited. So you have grace in that. I understand it's not all interesting.
Something else I think is big as far as love and action is giving each other space and grace if your temper does flare up, or if I am being passive aggressive, and allowing each other to be like, okay, this doesn't define how I feel about you. This isn't going to change how I'm treating you in this moment. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you space and time to process and work through. And, you know, maybe we need to take a break for just a minute before we come back together so that we can talk through things kind of with a level head, but being able to see that in each other, be like, okay, I know you need a minute right now, or you can see that I need a minute right now, and not letting it build up any kind of resentment. I think that's one of the really big ones for us.
We still get to choose to respond to love.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Your actions do not define how I respond to you, because I'm choosing you in this.
Because that's not even who she really is. Kaitlynn isn't passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
No. And what you just described is so hard for me, at least, because that is how Miriam works through things. She wants a little bit of space. She wants time to consider her responses. And I want to work it out now.
Maybe that's a guy
Please.
thing. That might be a guy thing.
Well, and it's one of those things too. You know, I think all couples experience this at some point, which is, what's wrong? Nothing. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I've had to learn over time to go exactly what you said. Whatever's frustrating in this moment that does not affect our relationship. Mm-hmm. I know that Miriam has chosen me. I know that I have chosen her. So did it take a long time? And it still goes against my instincts to go, okay, she needs that space. Let me give her that space.
So as I'm listening, I'm thinking, one, how fun is it that we've been paired together with people who are very opposite.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to love language, and I think that's also, I think that's an intentional thing that God often does with us is that he's wanting us to continue to grow into Christ-like maturity, and he'll bring someone along our path that's going to push all of those buttons to help us to grow into Christ-like maturity. You talk about passive aggressiveness, and those are things that we're not passive aggressive. Love is never passive aggressive. It speaks the truth. It doesn't hide. It doesn't veil. It's not like, hey, I'm trying to play this game to get you to think what I'm thinking and make you to guess. I want you to want to do this. No. Wait, hold on. Roll it back, right? We're going to communicate with one another effectively with our mouths and understand that the way that we communicate might be a little bit different. Like what Danny was just saying, that I want to work things out right now. Well, right now might not be the moment. We might need a moment to think, to consider, because if you force me to talk right now, you might hear something and I might say something that I'm not ready to say or wanting to say. And then once it's out there, like my words are powerful. So once it's out there, I can't get it back. So I remember Marley and I, we had that when she was in college, and when we both were in college, that was one of the things that we had to work through, was figuring out what kinds of communicators we were. Cause I was like that, like there's a problem. We're not letting the sun go down in her anger. So we're going to talk this through and we're going to work this out. And she's like, I'm not ready for this. I can't formulate my thoughts. And that's the other thing, like you said, Kate, giving the grace for that. Not everyone can formulate their thoughts like this, maybe like you can, and that's okay. Maybe there's other things that they are considering that you're not in this. So allowing for that space to take time, and take place. But then at the same point, not taking 3 weeks, and that's an exaggeration, not taking 3 or 4 days even.
Well, just not avoiding it
and
altogether.
avoiding it because I don't want to deal with this. I don't know how to deal with this. So therefore I'm not going to. And what I'm going to do is blow up on you when you forget to clean the sink with, you get your hair out of the sink, you know what I'm saying? And so it's both sides get to learn how to, cooperate with one another and communicate, because we keep ourselves from this place of we're going to walk in love, and we're going to remember we're on the same team.
Right.
We're on the same team here. And if teammates are having an issue, then we need to work this thing out, because that's the last thing that God wants. And the first thing the devil wants is I want to split you up somehow, and whatever, I'm going to do it with these buttons that I know how to push here, and I'm going to use your wife, or I'm going to use your husband to do it.
Yeah,
it
happens.
Like, don't you play for the devil's team.
Right. And that's what I would say. I think that's an immediate kind of a thing that you can recognize pretty easily is this is an attack on our unity, or, or, this is just a divider. Okay. Well, then I know what to do. And that, and that moment of feeling overwhelmed, like, I can't believe he said that or that. Wait a second.
Yep.
He's frustrated, he's tired, or whatever. This is just an attack on our unity. And I can recognize that and continue to choose love.
So in speaking of unity and agreement and oneness, when you are having a dispute, an argument, we'll say, heated discussion, this leads me to my next question. Are you willing to say, I'm sorry, even if it's not your fault, even if you are actually correct?
Yes, because I don't like conflict. And that sounds funny in the moment, but it's true. I would rather go, I'm sorry now, to work towards the resolution. And maybe that's the wrong approach. I don't know. I've been conflict avoidant my whole life. I can do it, but I have to put it on like a jacket, right? I've got to say, okay, we're going to come from two separate sides here, and we're going to come to some sort of agreement. We're going to walk together in some way. But I think of, I don't know if it was a cartoon or something I saw, but somebody said, one person says to the other person, I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? I don't know, but I'm really sorry. And I am quick to say, I'm sorry. I think usually, even when I think I'm wrong, if I believe that my I'm sorry will get us to resolution faster. Now, what I may not do as well is I may not mean I'm sorry when I say it.
Yeah.
Right. And I recognize that, and I need to do better. And you guys can all pray for me.
I think too, what's important not to remember is, I was just sitting here thinking, because we were talking about this earlier about whether or not you forgive isn't dependent on whether or not you get a sorry. So I'm thinking about like disagreements that we've had and opportunities that we've had where maybe the words weren't exchanged of I'm sorry, but maybe, I forgive you, or, the forgiveness has come even without the apology. Yeah. So whether or not I'm willing to say I'm sorry, I'm definitely willing to forgive.
But are you willing to say I'm sorry, even though you're the right one? That's it, because you're describing if there was a clear wrong,
right.
and the other yes, absolutely. Yeah. But I'm talking about specifically, you're having a discussion. You're actually correct. Are you willing to release that?
And before Miriam answers for herself, I will say yes. The most important I'm sorry that I've ever gotten from Miriam is she looked at me and she said, "I choose you," and I was wrong. I was very wrong. And Miriam, in the 100% right, said, "I choose you."
So I guess that's a yes.
Sorry, you made me cry. I made me cry.
That's so good, because being right doesn't mean being righteous.
Right.
And that's what I was saying. You were talking about laying down your sorry, and I was thinking I'm very willing to lay down my rightness or being right. And that has been a process, because being right or having knowledge was a high commodity growing up to me, being smart and knowing things and knowing facts and having the right things. And, so being able to say, I'm willing to lay down my rightness or my correctness in this because I choose the relationship over that moral high ground.
Yeah. I would say for us, it's definitely something we're still working on, something that we're always trying to be better at. And I know in this particular scenario, you're saying there is like a clear wrong and a clear right. And very rarely is that the case. Most of our arguments or disagreements or anything, we're both a little bit right, at least, even if it is weighted one way or another. But even if in this situation, if I'm definitely right, I probably still could have handled it better. So my apology would definitely come from a place of like, I'm sorry about how I handled this, or that I was pushy to try to get you to see my point, or like I wasn't loving through the discussion. Like there's always somewhere, to improve. And I think that's probably where my sorry would be, is how I handled it or how I could have handled things better.
I was thinking along like the same exact lines, because so you like to be a peacemaker, you'll, go ahead and say, I'm sorry. We're both pretty stubborn, Yeah. So I think what trips us up is that when I'm listening, sometimes I'm not listening to hear her or to understand her fully.
Yeah.
I want to understand her enough to prove her wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's not right. That's not love. That's not any of it. So, even if I am right, that maybe that's in my eyes. And Kaitlyn's really opened that whole world up to me, that maybe it's not just black and white. Maybe it is a little bit gray. And from this perspective, this is what it is right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the other layer to this, is that we're all growing. Mm-hmm. So maybe I can go to the scripture and say, nope, you're flat out wrong. But in this season, I need more grace in this area, or she needs more grace in this area, and as we continue to grow and that kind of stuff, that's something that God's going to be able to transform. So
that's so good. And I love that you even use that illustration of going to scripture, because even in scripture, you think about this, and I said this earlier before you continued on, which was right does not mean righteous. Mm-hmm. And right makes one person right and the other person wrong. Mm-hmm. Righteous makes you both right. Mm-hmm. And I think about talking about the letter of the law, that when Jesus was on the earth and the Pharisees were around, Jesus goes and he heals on the Sabbath, which according to the letter of the law is not right, but it was righteous. Right. And so there's something to be said about this higher principle, raising the conversation and saying, okay, we're down in the weeds here on what is right and what is wrong. And what we're missing is the righteousness, which is the kingdom.
Yep.
right? His righteousness, his peace, and his joy in the Holy Ghost, right? And so I think it's so, as we're continuing to mature and as we're continuing to grow, the element of I need to be right in this begins to go away, and the element of let us be righteous in this begins to arise. And that's where you see a maturation in a relationship, and it's like, hey, we don't even have these kinds of conversations anymore, because those things, we find that doesn't matter. It's down here in the weeds, right? Versus up here, like continuing to elevate that. Yeah, it's my new default, right? This is where we default now and so that's so good. I love that, you guys. I love hearing your all's perspective on that too. Let's continue on here, and we'll wrap it up kind of in this section here. You mentioned earlier, we just touched a little bit on intimacy. You know, we talked about laughter and joy with one another. We talked about how you demonstrate love to one another. Let's talk about intimacy. And when I mention intimacy, I want to be clear about this. I'm not specifically saying sex life, because I think that's often the equation, is intimacy is sex life. And sex life is part of intimacy, and you're willing to discuss whatever you're willing to discuss. That's up to you guys. But what I'm talking about is your time spent together, you know, romantically, not necessarily sex, but romantically, intimately, time spent with just us, right? This connection. How happy, we'll start with the youngers. How happy are you with your intimacy level with one another?
I think we have a unique vantage point because we have been married for almost 7 years and we don't have any kids. And that doesn't happen very often, at least not on purpose. We were 20 when we got married, and we knew right when we got married that we wanted to have quite a bit of time. You know, we said 5 years originally, and a lot of people say that and then they change their mind, or there's a surprise baby or something like that. But that's something we've really tried to be a focus, is learning how to be with each other, learning how to prioritize each other, because a baby comes and then everything changes. And so if we can get that baseline down first, then I feel like we would set ourselves up for success later. And so we spend a lot of, I guess you call it like pillow talk. Like a lot of our conversations are, you know, just laying in bed, going to bed for the night. And I think for us, for him especially, it's emotional intimacy. He's learned a lot over the last couple of years of like being able to put a name to what he's feeling. And so when he does that, then he's able to communicate more fully. And then I am in turn able to understand more fully. And so that's definitely been a point of growth for us recently, emotionally. And then, you know, physically, things ebb and flow throughout marriage. And, you know, you have high times and low times. And, you know, we've had some conversations about stuff like that. But as far as emotionally, I feel like he gets me and he hears me and he cares about, even if he tells me feelings aren't facts, because I am an Enneagram 4. And if you know what that is, then you know I'm very in my feels a lot. And so he does have to bring me back down to earth, and your feelings or your emotions are getting the better of you. And he can do that, and it might frustrate me in the moment, but I know that he's right. But even through all of that, like, he still cares that I'm sad or frustrated, or, you know, even the other side of it, joyful or exuberant or happy or whatever. He's always cared about that. So I know that emotionally, I feel really good about where we are.
I think for me, we don't steward quality time well because we have so much availability. It's like, I have such a high balance that we're not intentional as far as like when we're at home, and you know, we can literally, like, she'll say things like, I just need to spend like time with you, because like before we went to R&R this week, she's like, we're not going to be able to be by ourselves very much. You know, we're going to be around people. And back in my mind, I'm like, I see you every night. You're all I come home to at night. But it's because we don't steward it well, because we have so much. So I would love to grow in that. Yeah. And, you know, whether that's like phones go away at 9:00 or something like that, whatever that would be and whatever that looks like, that would be like an area I'd want us to grow in, is intentionality with the time we do have together, because this is such a good season, because like you said, you can't really get this time back.
Right.
So
Thank you for sharing that. Because I asked that as an intentional question because, and this is the prompt, and we'll get to you guys and your answer here in just a second. This is the kind of question that helps us to grow in relationship. And maybe this is for our listeners today to say, I want to see growth in my relationship. I've been married for 2 years or 3 years, and they say statistically around the 7-year mark is where you begin to have some issues. And so maybe you're experiencing that even, today in your relationship. And these are the kinds of questions that we can ask that will help to propel us forward and to honestly assess when you're transparent with one another and you're honest with one another and say, hey, look, this is what I see, this is where we are. And it's not an indictment. Like when you're having that conversation, it's not like, this is your problem. This is your problem. It's this, we're a team together. These are, let's assess our deficiencies. We're bad at shooting. Let's learn to shoot better. We're bad at passing. Let's learn to pass better. And I want to improve in this area, doing like that. So that's why I'm asking this question. I meant to say this beforehand, but that's why I'm asking this question. So thank you for sharing that, position. What about you guys? You all have been married for a little bit longer, 3 times as long as they have. Yeah. So you've gotten to see a little bit more of life and experience a little bit of that when it comes to intimacy.
Well, I would like to say 2 things. The first thing I wanted to say was, and I love that you brought up, excuse me, that you're asking this as an assessment for moving forward, because as a couple who we waited 8 years before we had kids, we were together for 8 years, and that time that we had together, we didn't steward it well, and we didn't recognize that. And so even now, 23 years, 14 years later, making intentional time for each other as far as like, it's still an issue for that's something that we definitely could grow in, because we didn't say, okay, this is the X amount of time for you, and so when we go to bed at the same time and we get to have pillow talk or whatever, it's like, this is amazing. I really like going to bed with you at the same time, because I stay up late and he goes to bed early. So that doesn't happen a whole lot. Right. So I get to choose to go to bed with him to have those conversations. And that's a way for our intimacy that I would like to see that intimacy grow. Another thing that I wanted to say too, is, you guys have married 7 years, and after being married for a while, when you're young, when you very first get married, this person, I'm giving my whole self to this person. I'm going to hold nothing back. And then you move in and you see that, well, they're crazy, so I'm not going to share this much with them, or whatever. Or I really don't like the way he responded to this, or he made me feel really stupid, so I'm going to quit telling him about that, And Danny's not but there are little things that creep in, and then there are bigger issues that come. And so you start to shutter your heart. Yeah. And you start to build that wall, and it's like, okay, so, and I've recognized even, like in our physical intimacy too, where it's like, okay, I need to be more vulnerable with you in this, or I need to be more vulnerable with you in how I'm feeling about X, Y, Z, and I have to trust, rebuilding some of that can be hard to do. And so what I have been, and we've talked about this, but what I have been working on for the past 2 years, I think, it was like 2020, I think, when I was 2019, 2020. So 4 years. I lose track of time, clearly. But is recognizing where I'm holding back and saying, wait, I don't want to hold back from this person. I've chosen him. Yeah. If I say I've chosen him, then I'm going to do it fully. I'm going to fully choose him. So allowing that vulnerability and that intimacy, as far as you said, being fully transparent with one another, really walking in that. And after 23 years, we have opportunity, and I have even, you find different things online or whatever, like questions that you can ask each other. Okay, Danny, on the 5th of the month, we're going to go to dinner and we're going to have our marriage evaluation, and it's not, I'm not thinking to replace you, but here's how I would like, to improve.
Is it pass fail?
Well, do you know what that is though? Is in like when you go to the doctor, that's not sick care, it's wellness care. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're like checking up before there's a problem.
Exactly.
And you've got a fever and now you're taking an antibiotic.
Right.
You're getting ahead of it.
And I think
because oftentimes when you don't do that, then we're the ones that get to see you.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Well, and you said earlier about like taking your vitamins and stuff. It's preventative care.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm going to deal with, as Christians, we don't like to think about the bad that could happen, or, I'm going to be careful with my tongue and what I'm saying, what I'm confessing. But at the same time, we have to recognize these opportunities and deal with them head on so that we're not blindsided by something that could have been avoided by just being more intimate with each other. So
And we're not immune to marital issues because we're Christians or because we're in a faith-based kind of marriage. And I think people kind of forget that ahead of time. Like, oh, okay, well we've got Christ, so we're good. So it takes like the load off of us, but that still requires requires the work. Right.
Yeah, it's great because it's we have Christ. We don't have problems. I wish that were the case.
I know.
We have Christ for our problems,
Exactly.
and that's the barometer by which and how that's what makes it different is like we handle this through the lens of Christ, not through the lens of self.
Yeah.
And what does love look like in this situation? If there's a lack of intimacy here, what does love look like? Do I shut up? Do I pull away? Do I play a game? Because, you're doing this to me, so I'm going to, do this to you.
Right.
Or do we have this conversation like you said, or have an honest assessment and say, okay, this is where I am and I want to express this to you, have the confidence to be able to come to you and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Can we work through this together?
And even having those prompts. So to answer your question about, am I happy with our intimacy? I'm very happy with the intimacy that we are working on together.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to say two things. One is once upon a time when Miriam and I went to marriage counseling, well into our marriage, 10, 11 years into our marriage, something I should have realized a long time ago, but it took somebody telling me this as plain as day, that I remember the marriage counselor looked at me and said, spending time together in the same house or in the same room is not the same as spending time with each other.
Yeah.
That blew my mind because my need for quality time is fulfilled by being near Miriam.
Yeah.
In the proximity where she is. One of Miriam's love languages, or the way that she receives love, is through quality time. That means it doesn't mean I get to sit there and explain the exciting things that I found about some random topic that day, but it means we spend time together. We talk about our past. We talk about our future. We talk about hopes and dreams for each other, for the people that we know, and how we can work together. And then I've also learned one way to spend quality time and still live in a busy household, right, in a busy life, is to co-labor. As much as I didn't want to do the dishes, right? Just, cleaning the kitchen after dinner every night together. I think that's an awesome time. Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to say is there's a reason why we say, when you say intimacy, you think about physical intimacy. And that's because physical intimacy generally at some level requires nudity. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know if you can tell because I wear a sweatshirt, but I do not look like a male model. But the thing is I know that Miriam has chosen me. She has chosen my body. She has chosen the good and the bad. Right. And intimacy really is that you alluded to it, not having anything to hide with your partner, with your spouse.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, you say that and it doesn't have to be deep secrets. It can be, man, I didn't like the way this went down at work today because, and it can't be, I didn't like it because that person makes me mad and I don't like them. When reality is, I didn't like the way that went down because it made me feel inferior and that scared me.
Yeah.
And just that kind of honesty with your spouse is just, you don't get that with anybody else in the world ever.
Yeah. That's so good. The Bible says that it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. And, if you look at your relationship together as a vine that is being grown and hopefully producing fruit as well, there are things that would try to spoil that. Obviously we know, and coming in between this place of intimacy between a husband and a wife is one of those areas. But do you know what the biggest cause of a break in intimacy is? What one of the biggest foxes is in spoiling a relationship?
No.
Are you going to tell us?
Oh, is that a question?
I thought it was rhetorical.
Yeah.
If we had said no, would you have still told us?
It's your phone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's your phone. Think about it. What do you touch more, your spouse or your phone? What do you listen to more, your spouse or your phone? What do you look at more, your spouse or your phone? What's the last thing you look at night, your spouse or your phone? What's the first thing you look at in the morning, your spouse or your phone? You get to think about it in those kinds of terms and that kind of context. And it seems like it's so innocent, yet it's the little foxes that spoil the vine, you know, and it's these moments of like exactly what you said, Danny, we can be in the same room, but we are not together, you know? And so I carry my phone with me everywhere that I go. Do you carry your spouse with you? You know, like, are you here with me? So there's a lot to be able to look at and to assess. And I love that you even mentioned, like, as a point for continued growth in intimacy is to say, we're going to put a cap on phone time.
Right.
You know, after 9 p.m., phones are off. You know, that's one of the things I do appreciate about Miriam. If I go to text Miriam and it's 9 p.m., it already says do not disturb. Like, I know.
And then what's really cool, it has that little button that says notify anywhere.
That's absolutely right.
Boom.
That's
And
absolutely
she
right.
still ignores it.
That's a really good point, right?
Yeah.
Because Miriam and I just got, for our 14-year-old, he got a phone on his birthday, and we have limits set on the time that he can spend on that phone. But I don't put that limit on myself.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I should, but you know, I'm still there playing whatever that game is. We play Farmville or something right before I go to bed. What's it called? Township.
It's Farmville.
If somebody wants to give the table a sponsor.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So maybe as the dessert, maybe that could be the dessert, something to think about and to consider and to ask yourself in your relationships, you know, even in, like, this can even carry over into not just a marital relationship, but in your other relationships that you have. You know, are you considering the time spent with one another, your communication together, laughing together? These are basic things that help to build and to put together good, solid, strong relationships. And sometimes we just walk through life kind of unassuming and like it is what it is, but being intentional, and this is the dessert, be intentional about your relationships with one another. Be intentional about the questions that you're asking one another. Like, ask those types of questions. Am I okay with the intimacy that where we are? You know, that kind of stuff, and assess. Am I more intimate with my phone than anyone? You know, that kind of stuff. And if you don't like what you see, then I think the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Right. Change the result by changing what you're putting into it, you know? And so, I think that's pretty much it for today.
Awesome.
You'll have anything else you want to parting thoughts?
Something that we have done, we did it a couple weeks in a row, but then we got off track with it. We take a night a week, like at the beginning of the week. So it was Monday night and now it's Sunday night, and we sit at our kitchen table or on the couch or on the bed, and we go over the groceries for the week, our budget for the week. And then we always like to ask, what's one thing that you think we're doing really well? What's one thing you think we need to improve on? What's something you think I need to, like, individually and both, you know, together and separately. And that also helps kind of gauge where each other's at, so we don't get even mentally or emotionally too distant from one another. So that's something that's helped us a lot. And then as you start that conversation, things will come up that you weren't thinking of actively, but it's still something that comes up that needs talked about. So that's been really good for us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other parting shots?
Not
Thoughts?
for me.
Shots, thoughts?
I didn't know I was going to be given the opportunity to speak a conclusion, so I don't have anything to add to what Kaitlynn said.
As the oldest of the group, Danny.
Would you like some sage wisdom?
Actually, you know what? Really quick before we go, and this could be like a two phrase thing. Like, it doesn't have to be long drawn out. If you could give yourself one piece of advice from back then, like you today talking to younger you before you got married, what would it be?
I already know mine.
Go ahead.
That doing things for your husband doesn't mean you're being walked over as a woman. So I was raised to be very independent, you don't need a man, you want a man, you know, that type of thing. And then when I got with Taylor, I was like, I do need him. Like, I need him emotionally and physically and mentally. And that was hard to reconcile in my mind. And, you know, it doesn't make you less of an independent person, and it doesn't change, you know, what you were raised. So it doesn't, we don't have very traditional gender roles in our marriage, and, we both have full-time jobs and things like that. But when I do those more domestic type things, it doesn't make me less of who I was raised to be. So if I could go back and tell 20-year-old Kaitlynn that, like, it's okay to be selfless in that, it doesn't mean that you're negating what you've learned. Right. So, yeah.
Kaitlynn is not someone you need to hide from. And she's a safe person that you can talk to about anything.
I would say Danny is not a mind reader, and you are not a mind reader either. So don't assume you know what he's thinking.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We could have a whole podcast on that. That's good.
How much time we got?
Right?
Don't be an idiot. Miriam is an amazing, wonderful, wonderful person, and don't be an idiot.
I like it. Don't be an idiot. You heard it first here at the table.
You heard it.
And see if you can finish this one with me. Thank you for joining us at the table.
Well,
You'll always
have to be here.
Yeah.